Hey everyone, look what I got next to me. It's the Fermentasaurus by Oxebar. You want to know what I think of this product? Keep on watching. Alright folks, welcome back. I am going to do just like I did before with my catalyst fermenter and my fast ferment fermenters, I am going to put the Fermentasaurus through an actual brew day and fermentation and transfer to keg experience, just like I did in those other videos. And thanks to a lot of you who've actually requested that I review this thing, because up until you guys had proposed I review this thing, I had not even heard of it, and apparently I guess it's a newer product, which is also possibly why I don't know anything about this thing until recently. I watched all their overview videos from Oxebar as to how to use this thing, set it up, sanitize it, use it, and I gotta tell you, it's gonna be hard to contain my excitement with this thing, folks, because I am stoked. From what I can tell and what I read, this thing is not just a regular plastic conical fermenter like the others. This thing is what's known as a unitank. It's pressurizable to 35 psi or 2.4 bar, depending on which country you're from, right? And this thing could be used to not just ferment and drain the trub out from the collection jar down below, like the other fermenters, which is what they all have in common. What makes this thing stand out more is its ability to be pressurized. And what you're seeing here inside the tank is, well, I have the accessory for the pressure lid kit that was sent with it. And what I'm showing here are the gas and bev ports and check valve on top here, just like you would get on top of a Cornelius keg. And what you can do here is use this to not just let the fermentation complete, but you can let it naturally carbonate in here, which is pretty cool, right? And not only can I let it naturally carbonate, I can also rack or transfer this thing from here to my keg without a siphon or exposing this thing to the atmosphere, which is also a huge bonus if you're concerned about your beer getting oxidized or contaminated. This thing can solve that problem, and that's what excites me the most. I am, for the first time in my brewing history, going to transfer beer under pressure that's hopefully already carbonated from my unitank fermenter here, the Fermentasaurus, to my keg, and shave a week off of the forced carbonation time I will get with my keg, save on the exposure to the oxygen and potential contamination in this thing, and the hassle of using gravity to lift this thing up to a higher elevation to transfer this thing to my keg using a gravity-fed siphon hose. I'm going to do all of this without all this extra problems and hassles I've had before with other fermenters, including my carboys. So if this thing works out, this is going to be my new go-to fermenter. So let's go ahead and walk through this process and see what happens, huh? By default, it comes with these parts you see here, a little manual for assembly and instruction manual. It comes with a default lid like this one here, which is plugged up except for the port for the airlock, which just pops in like that, right? I'm not going to use this in this video, but you can use this as a standard fermenter, just like the other conicals. But in my opinion, that would just make this like the other conicals. I want to go over what's neat and new and unique about this device. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the pressure lid kit. It also comes with this little hose barb port to use a siphon hose or a racking hose to transfer your beer. And again, I'm not going to use this in this video because I have the pressure lid kit, and that's going to give me the bonus benefit of not having to use gravity and lift this thing up, and also the benefit of not introducing possible oxygen and other things into the transfer. It also comes with this little cap for your trub jar, so you can screw this on, and you can capture your yeast and put it in your fridge just like the other fermenters too. But aside from that, I'm going to use the pressure lid kit that is an optional add-on accessory for this thing, for this video, because I am excited about the potentials for this thing. And so what you're looking at here is a lid similar to the other lid, right? But this lid It's just got the port for the airlock. This one has a pressure relief valve and the ports for the gas and bev, just like any other homebrew keg does, right? So you can use it with your existing homebrewing draft equipment and move on with that, right? And also underneath here, as you can see that there's a silicone hose that you can attach to this port with a floater, stainless steel floater ball on the other end. And what this can do is that you can now serve beer from here directly out of the port, or you can rack it to another fermenter or to a keg like I will later in this video. And what this floater ball does is that it keeps it floating at the surface of the beer. So in case you didn't get all your trub out or sediment in your beer in the bottom, you won't be pulling that up into your keg or bottles or beers or your other fermenter. You'll just be pulling liquid off the top. So that's kind of neat. So let's see how that works out for us, huh? Another unique feature of this device, different from the other conicals I play with, is that these have left and right hand threads that fight each other to keep them from unturning when you go to remove the collection ball down below. It doesn't want to unscrew the entire device and leak like the other fermenters would. So the other fermenters, you generally have to hold on to the top part and unscrew the bottom to keep it from unscrewing all the way around. This thing, and they designed this thing with that in mind by having a left-hand thread, I think it is up here, and a right-hand thread down below. So now you can turn this thing on and off and not worry about having to grip and hold on to the top part while you do it. It just shows how much thought they put into this thing, and I think it's really cool. All right, folks, let's get started sanitizing here. What I have here is my sanitizer solution with Star San in it, and I'm going to pour it into my fermenter to swish it around. But since I have it in a smaller container and I need to sanitize other parts to this as well, I'm going to go ahead and put this whole assembly in here for a little bit and get it soaking. And after a couple of minutes, I'm going to go ahead and take these out and just set them off to the side on a sanitized surface. I'm going to go ahead and pour my sanitizer solution into the Fermentasaurus. All right. Now I'm going to take my sanitized lid and tubing and ball. I'm going to drop that in there. Put this on. Okay. Let's see if I can just pick this thing up out of the container here and swish it around. And while it's upside down, I'm going to try to get some to come out of the ports here. So it's a brand new port, so it's a little stiff, so I'm going to need something to pop this with. What better thing to use than a gas disconnect, huh? Put that on there. There we go. See? Perfect. Sweet. Okay, put that back on here. Now I'm going to go ahead and open the valve down below here. Let that fill up. All right. Take that off. And then I'm going to pour that into my wallpaper tray holder here, along with the other parts again. Put that in there. And pour that out. I'll tell you right now, I like the bigger opening here compared to a carboy, let's say, because that foam from the sanitizer solution comes right on out of there, and it doesn't get stuck in the neck like it would on a carboy. So that's kind of nice. I got a lot of the foam out. The rest of the foam is not a concern so much because it'll turn back into liquid, and I'll pour it back out later. No big deal. And then for the time being, I'm going to go put this back in because I want the container to be somewhat sealed the rest of the day while I go about my brew day. Keep all the germs out. All right, let's move on. All right, folks, I got my chilled wort overhead here in the upper corner, and I got my Fermentasaurus right here. I'm going to go ahead and fill her up. There it goes, folks. Filling up. So let's wait a little bit and we'll come back. Okay, it's all filled up to capacity here. All the work I'm going to get out of my kettle's out. Okay. Now, before I put the lid back on, the instructions from the Fermentasaurus say to put on some kind of food grade lubricant grease sealant on there for a better seal around the lid. So I'm going to do that, and this is the same stuff I put on my O-rings for my kegs. So I'm going to go put a little bit of this around the seal around the lid and then put the lid on. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to get a little bit of grease here. I'm going to put it around the seal, just a really thin bead, just like that. Put the lid on, screw on the rest of the lid, snug it up, because I'm going to pressurize this, or actually let it naturally carbonate is my point here. Screw that on, nice and snug. All right, let's oxygenate this thing. There we go. Okay, that's it for the oxygen. So I'm going to put the yeast in now, swirl it up, take the top off. For those who are aware that I use a magnetic stirring bar, I'm going to go ahead and pull the stirring bar right on out of there. Swirl it up some more, and let's go ahead and pour it in. And for the final time, I will be putting this lid back on again and snug it down. And now I'm going to let this thing naturally carbonate, but before I do that safely, and for my last act today, aside from moving this thing down to my basement to ferment, is that I need, because I'm going to let this thing naturally carbonate under pressure, which is the advantage of having a pressurizable unit tank like the Fermentasaurus. So I have my gas in here, which is going to be my gas out until it finishes carbonating. So I'm going to go ahead and put my ball, my gas ball lock disconnect on there. And what I have here is a hose that ultimately I made myself, which has it's a spunding valve. So I have this thing I made myself on parts at Home Depot and from Amazon.com. I went ahead and got this little pressure relief valve and this pressure gauge and some hardware here as well. And what's going to happen here is that I'm going to dial this thing into I don't know, maybe like 10 psi, I think is its limit. And as this thing naturally carbonates and the pressure exceeds 10 psi, it's going to burp it and vent it so this thing doesn't turn into a bomb. All right, and so that's going to be important for this. Okay, so there you go. If you want to see a video on how I made this, I can do that. Just let me know and I can follow up with a follow-up do-it-yourself video. But for now, this is not the point of this video, so let's carry on. All right, and this Fermentasaurus comes with these handles here, which is kind of nice, and a stand. So I'm going to go ahead and hoist this thing up and carry it down to my basement. All right, folks, we're back down in my basement with the Fermentasaurus here in its resting position here, ready to ferment for the next couple of weeks. I had a little problem here trying to get the little trub jar here to fill up. The valve got clogged. I had to break it free with a sanitized aluminum stick. I had to take the stuff back apart again to do that. You know, unfortunately, I did not expect it to happen right away. So that was an unexpected turn of events there. But don't worry, got everything sanitized. Everything's back together. It's now filled up. I hope we're in the clear. And we'll just wait until later, and we'll come back and remove the trub jar in the future, and ultimately let this thing naturally carbonate, which I'm most excited about. So now it's been a couple days since brew day. This thing's fermenting quite nicely. It's already peaked and already starting to recede already. It's been building up pressure naturally in this thing, and this spunding valve I built has been working quite well. It was actually pressurizing up to in the upper teens before I finally realized it was too high, and I turned down the pressure relief valve, brought the PSI back down to about 10 to 12 psi, and it's holding steady right now. And also the trub is settling out, and some of the yeast down into the bottom jar down below here is starting to fill up. I'm going to change that sometime in the very near future. But other than that, well, it's doing quite well. So let's keep going, huh? All right, folks, let's change this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, close the valve, just like that. And I'm going to unscrew this thing. All right, well, I think this was because I fermented this thing under pressure. As you can see, its pressure is being released now. I don't fault the fermenter for this as much as my choice of fermenting under pressure, which is what I thought was the advantage of this tool. But as you can see, it is foaming everywhere, and this is a downside to fermenting under pressure and removing trub. So I think in the future I might just leave the trub jar on and just leave it in place, because I'm of the mindset that the trub doesn't really hurt your beer at all anyway. I just did a video actually in a commentary video on why I don't use secondary fermenters, and this would sort of fit into that category there. So I could have just left this on and it had no problem, but now I have a mess on my hands to clean up. Alright folks, I dumped, washed, rinsed, and sanitized the trub jar again, so let's screw it back on. I also cleaned up the mess on the floor, if you haven't noticed. I will never be doing that again. Alright, so let's just go ahead and open up anyway though. Let's go let it trub settle out anyway. See what happens. Look at that. Yeah, that is definitely under some pressure, folks. Alright, well, lesson learned. Since I added some oxygen into this closed environment and I don't have an airlock on here to let the oxygen out, I'm going to go ahead and purge this. I think that should be enough. Put this back and off we go. It's been over 2 weeks now since brew day, and I am ready to rack to a keg. So what you're looking at is the Fermentasaurus sitting here in the middle with my washed, cleaned, and sanitized keg right here with me that's also been pressurized with some CO2, and the CO2 tank off to the side. So what I'm going to do is use this transfer hose that I made to transfer the beer from the Fermentasaurus to the keg under pressure in a closed system. And in order to do this well, I need to try to get the balance of pressures here. So I have, I think, 11, almost 12 psi in the Fermentasaurus. My pressure in here should be probably about a pound or two less, ideally, per square inch, so probably around 10 psi, in order to avoid either a fast transfer, which will cause foaming, or a non-transfer, because the pressure is here higher than that. These pressure gauges are not accurate, so we're going to discover how accurate they are here in just a moment. Alright, so let's go ahead and get transferring. And first things first here, folks, I want to get a hydrometer reading. So I have here is my little homemade picnic tap hose here. I'm going to go ahead and fill up my hydrometer. Lots of foam. It's certainly carbonated. Alright, this might take a little while. Look at that. Alright, well, I'll be back. Alright, that's a little bit better. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the spunning valve on the keg here through the gas port here. I want to see for myself what the pressure is in here. And it's showing about 8 psi, and now it's showing about 12, so about 4 psi difference. Hopefully that's not too much of a difference. And I'm going to go ahead and use this also as a pressure relief valve. So as the pressure in here pushes the beer into here, and the pressure increases in here, it'll cap it here. So that way it'll keep the beer flowing from here to here without me having to pull the check valve all the time. At least that's my intent. We'll see how this works. Alright, time for the moment of truth, folks. Alright, this is the bev line. Alright, go ahead and put you in there. Alright, and this is the bev in. Cross your fingers. Well, there it goes. It's transferring. I hear it. It's going. All right. All I gotta do now is keep an eye on the spunding valve. See, the pressure's starting to go up here from about 8 to 9 already. So my goal is to get it closer to the 11 or 12 where it was, and then I'm gonna vent it a little bit so the pressure here is a couple PSI less than over here. Now off to the left here, I got my CO tank set according to its regulator to just a tad under 10 PSI. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this on here to give it some more boost here, to give it moving a little bit faster. There we go. All right, let's see how this works. So the pressure's gone up a bit now. I'm gonna go ahead and start venting that so it starts moving. There we go. All right, now I'm starting to see a little bit of flow in here. Visible air bubbles or CO2 bubbles in here flowing, so it's definitely working. Keep it off to about 8 again. And you may not be able to tell, folks, but it is draining here actually. It was up here, that was here, now it's down to here. So it is actually transferring. Okay, that's at 9. This is at 7, so it should be, yep, it's moving. I mean, it's hard to see, folks, but there's very fine bubbles coming out of here at a nice leisurely pace. That's good. My goal is to minimize foaming in here. If this went too fast and the pressure difference was too high between the two, this will foam up just like a warm beer or your first beer right out of the kegerator. It'll be all foam. So my goal is to not do that because I don't want a bunch of foam coming out this hose. I want it to fill right up as a liquid. So I finally struck a good balance here between pressures here. I got about 10 PSI over there, about 7.5, 8 PSI over here. So it's a little over 2 PSI difference between the two. The bubbles coming out here are minimal. It is dropping, although slowly, but it is dropping smoothly. There's no carbonation coming out of solution, no foaming going on as far as I can tell. And I think I found a good stride. I think a couple PSI difference is just right. It's kind of hard to see through the haziness of the fermenter, but the stainless steel ball float that's holding up the hose there is doing a pretty good job. It's taking the beer right off the top there without going down into the trub to pick up any of the beer. So that's a cool feature too. I can see the trub line right about here, so it's still got some room there. It's okay, it's sucking off the top again, so I'm not worried about the trub getting in there. At least I don't think I should be worried. We'll find out though. All right. Whoop. Oop, I had to disconnect the bev line in all of a sudden. It started to dig into the trub, so I went ahead and yanked it, and it's all good. So there you go. All right, I already yanked the bev line off the top to keep the trub from going into the keg. So let's just take everything else off of here. And success. There was no foam coming out of the spunding valve hose at all. So I transferred this thing nice and neat without any turbulence, I guess, or not enough turbulence. That makes me happy, folks. I'm really digging this. Now it's time to clean this thing up. Well, so let's go ahead and depressurize this. Now on the cleaning here, I have a bunch of PBW and some hot water in here soaking some of this beer stone off here. It's already coming off already after about 5 or 10 minutes, so can't scrub this stuff. It's plastic just like the other plastics. You don't want to scratch it or anything, so you kind of got to use a soft cloth, and it's good to let it soak in some hot water with some cleaner inside. I'm also going to clean out some of the hoses as well using the pressure. So this hose is dirty. So we're going to put this over here. There we go. Next hose. A picnic tap hose as well. There we go. Well, after having used this thing from start to finish, from sanitizing through kegging, I can only say, wow, this thing was cool. This was a fun project for me. On one hand, it's a lot like the other plastic conicals that I've looked at and reviewed on my channel thus far. It does a lot of the same functionality with trub removal and the conical shape and all that, right? But what really set this thing apart is the pressure lid kit and the ability to pressurize this thing naturally as well as artificially, to both naturally carbonate it and also to help assist with racking it to the keg. That was beautiful. I didn't have to hoist anything heavy over my head and sanitize a bunch of dangling, twisted up siphon hoses and things. This was fun. And the fact that I went out and built a spunding valve and a transfer hose for this thing, I'm not going to get rid of those now. I mean, why would I do that? It's awesome. I am going to use this thing again until something better comes along, because I think this hit a good sweet spot of price and performance. And again, the pressurizing ability of this thing sets it above the other ones I've looked at thus far. So, however, there are some lessons to be learned. If you're planning on doing some trub removal, or if you're the type of person that believes trub has to be removed from your primary before you start secondary fermentation, I'm not one of those. As you know now, I've come out of the closet basically in a video recently where I stated as much that I don't bother with removing trub. But if you are, and you want to naturally carbonate this thing, you may want to think about doing one or the other, but not both. As you've seen in my video, it can be messy, unless you want to put like a tray or something down below and have a spray bottle cleaner and some paper towels to wipe up the mess. That's up to you. But for me, I think I may skip the trub removal step in the future and just let it sit. I mean, the combination of this stainless steel ball and a float that floats the intake above the trub, to me, is satisfactory enough to not want to bother with trub removal at all. I think going forward, I will stick with the natural pressurization and just leave the trub alone. And while we're still on the trub issue, this thing seems to clog very easily. At least it did for me a couple times. As you saw in the video, it clogged initially, and I had to break that free with the stick, and it clogged again later, right after I transferred the new jar on there and opened the valve. Only some of the trub came through and there was airspace there. Well, that was a downer, but because it was pressurizing, I think the pressure in the upper tank forced the liquid and trub down and kind of blew out the clog basically down into the trub jar down below. So you've seen it, you know, it's just what it is. I'm not worried about it, but again, if you're worried about trub, that's something for you to be concerned about. It's something to keep an eye on. Another thing I learned was to allow this thing to pressurize at a higher PSI than I did. I capped it at around 11 PSI or 12 PSI in my video, and silly me, I didn't take into account the fact that I was doing this at room temperature. And for those of you who do calculations, in fact, my latest brewing spreadsheet update video that I just did talked a bit about the forced carbonation of how it's dependent upon temperature and pressure. Well, if it was room temperature, I should have had this thing pressurized to probably 20 PSI rather than 11 or 12. So when I threw it into my keg and it chilled down to 50 or 45 degrees, somewhere in there, it was a lot flatter than I wanted. So now I actually had to let it sit longer now and let it carbonate back up to the right carbonation level. But it's a lesson learned. Next time I know better. So I hope you enjoyed my review and my walkthrough of this. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun time. So if you're new to my channel and you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe. If you like the video, like it. If you have a comment, something to add, some advice, some questions, ask them down below in the comment section. And other than that, I'll talk to you all next time. See ya. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out other videos on my YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe.